I'm filling in for Les Boatwright today as vice chair. He's out of town. So with that, would you call the roll, please, Christina?
Brad Chance.
Present.
Anthony Jeremita.
Here.
Greg McGee. Steve McLucky.
Present.
Michael Talcott.
Here.
Les Boatwright.
Okay, with that said, I'm going to let everybody know, too, that our new member, Greg McGee's unable to make it today. His son had an accident, and so they're getting some things checked out. Okay. I guess the minutes from last meeting. Okay, we'll postpone that till next. Yeah, okay. So first on is finance.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I think I've met everyone, but I'm Megan Borth, the interim finance director. So I looked over these. I hope you guys had time to as well. Everything looks pretty similar to where we'd want it to be for right now. Obviously, July is the first month of the fiscal year, so you can see where that percentage should be, around 8%, in the second to last column, and it just gives you a good kind of base of whether we're a little over budget or coming in a little under budget. So again, things are looking good like they always tend to. Revenues are higher, expenses are lower than where we expected them to be. Overall, everything looks good, but I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Do you have any questions? Okay, I guess see no questions. Thank you, appreciate that. Next on municipal services.
No formal reports today, but I did want to let you guys know that we have kickstarted a cost of service study for the sewer utility. So it's only sewer, not water, in this budget year. It's been on our budget list for a while, so just wanted to make you aware that that was going on. Birds and Max doing the study. So if you have any questions or any questions about our other projects, but otherwise it is still the end of construction season and we are trucking right along with all of the capital projects that you see on the list. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Boy, y'all are.
All right.
Okay, so we'll move on to IPL, and we have the update on the recommendations for the motion to rescind and update on the UET power generation.
Okay. Good afternoon. Joe Hagendeffer, Director. So first we'll start off with the resolution. Resolution 24-768 was passed Monday night 7-0 by the City Council. In that resolution, I will not go through all the whereases, but basically there were 5 sections to that impacted IPL. Section 1 basically said that the City of Independence expressed its desire to retain public ownership of Independence Power and Light. The Independence City Council believed that a public vote regarding ownership of IPL would be costly, contentious, and unproductive. Then the Independence City Council further believes that there are several looming challenges that need to be addressed urgently in order to achieve the electric utility that Independence needs and deserves. So as we've talked, there's a lot of things that need to be done, and they need to start now, not a year or two from now. Section 4 talks about basically rescinding that non-ordinance action item that was passed on April 5th, 2023 that called for the citywide vote. Section 5 directs the city manager to address the conclusions of DKMT strategic plan and then further consider rates, new generation, reliability, and modern technology. And then actually, I guess there was a section 6 that also further directed the city manager to review the current governance model for IPL, along with alternative models presented by the DKMT white paper, and make recommendations to city council for consideration. So that was passed 7-0, which puts us in a good spot to be able to look forward and put some of those things behind us that we had been talking about for a long time. That's really, I don't have anything else to say about that unless you guys have comments or questions.
Anybody have any questions, comments?
My only comment would be that probably the next step for us is to look at governance, different governance structures. Talk about that and maybe suggest something to the city council, so.
So my plans are to, I have a couple of things that need to kind of happen in tandem, and one of those is I need to take that strategic plan, and my plan is to develop an implementation plan, right? Because
Great.
you guys all read that, the strategic plan had 90 pages worth of stuff, right? And I can't go, well, tomorrow I'm going to hire all these positions, and I'm going to implement, and I'm going to put in AMI, and, you know, I can't do that. So I really need a implementation plan that builds out a schedule for how and when I want to address each one of those things in the strategic plan and thoughtfully present that out. So I'll be putting that together and bringing that to present to you guys and council in the future on my best path in order to implement those strategies. And then the other thing is, yes, the city manager was directed to come up with some recommendations for governance models, looking at other areas in our city and trying to figure out what would work best for a recommendation of governance of IPL.
And I would hope that they'd be looking at doing some work on the infrastructure for IPL2 also before they start getting too far ahead. Yeah, I mean, are they going to be, which comes first? Governance and then working on infrastructure, or do they kind of come hand in hand? Or?
I think they're parallel, two separate
Okay.
things, right?
Okay.
So infrastructure and things that need to be done as far as technology, system-wide and stuff like that, that's part of the implementation plan of the,
Okay.
the strategic stuff, right? The governance model, even if we had a recommendation in hand today and it went to city council and city council said yes, as you guys are all aware, that would require a charter change, right? So now we're talking a vote and other things. So that's not something that's gonna happen tomorrow, right? That's a long term. So I don't want the governance model to impede the strategic stuff that we need to do. So as we are today, we need to continue operating like we have been. And we'll talk about governance on the side and how we think we can move forward with that.
Mr. Chair, I couldn't agree more. I just think what I was trying to say is for the PUAB, I think we need to start looking at governance. You as the director, of course, will do everything you just said, but I think the one thing we can do is look at various governance structures, have some people come in and speak with us about that, and have some ideas on that. Does that make sense?
So that's the first item. The second item is the power generation option to lease agreement from UET Ventures. So I did send the PUAB an updated note on that because unfortunately, due to timing, that was not something that we could wait and bring to you guys before we got it to city council. So the timing issue really is around SPP approvals for the generation interconnect agreement. And I know we've talked about a few of those in the past, right? So there's a deadline in October to get into the current queue. And if we miss the current queue deadline, it pushes it really to a 2026 timeframe for the next queue because SPP is redoing how they're looking at these studies and how they organize them. So with that being said, another complicating factor is back in the day, if I was an investor and I wanted to build a wind farm, just for example, and I said, you know what, I've got 5 locations I want to build a wind farm, and I'm going to put them all in the generator interconnect queue, and whatever the lowest cost for distribution and transmission upgrades is where I'm going to locate it and get my biggest return on dollar. So I'm going to clog up the queue with 5 studies, and I'm really only going to do one project. And in fact, a couple of years ago, it was only like 15% of the projects that entered the queue came to fruition. right? So you have thousands of projects and everybody's going, all this wind's gonna be built. Well, not really. There's a lot of speculative stuff. So SPP put some guidelines around, well, you as an investor or you as a person cannot put something into the queue unless you actually have control over the land and can actually build the project and make it happen. So in order for UET Ventures to even look at putting that project, we had to enter into an agreement where they would have the option to even lease that land and get into the generator interconnect queue. That's all this was to get them permission to enter into that queue. So all the things that are gonna follow will be a lease agreement to talk about what is that pricing, what does that look like. Power purchase agreement will follow as well, right? And the specifics of the equipment and what does all of that look like. On top of that, we've got a triangle, which is I'm not gonna enter into a lease or purchase power agreement unless I have an off-taker agreement with a data center that's the whole driving factor of all of this, right? So all of those things are to come in the future in front of this board and the council for approval and agreement. This agreement in front of us was really just to give them permission that they could utilize our land and get themselves into the queue for the SPP, Generator Interconnect. Does that make sense? So as far as calculations on how much is the lease, how much is the purchase power, we haven't seen those yet, and those are agreements that will come in the future. So the way I look at this UET Ventures is you can look at it two different ways. For one, we went out for an RFP for up to 300 megawatts in order to help provide power to this data center, right? Well, this is in effect a response to that, but the power is going to be in our backyard. And I've also asked that there be an option that we purchase that, be able to purchase that equipment in the future. To buy them out. So you could look at it kind of like the solar farms, right? The solar farms, we own the land, we lease it to an owner operator, they own the solar panels, and we buy the power from them. And at a certain point in that contract, we have an option to buy them out and purchase and then own and operate it ourselves. So it's very similar in fashion to that. So with that, I'll open it for questions because I'm sure there are some. Unless I did such an outstanding job of explaining.
Oh, got some questions.
I'm sure.
I'm sure, you're sure I do.
No, that I didn't yet.
Does anybody have questions?
Yeah, I've got some.
Okay.
My first question would be, and I guess you may have kind of answered this already. What would happen if we wanted, let's say down the road, we wanted to do those two aeroderivative turbines that we had talked about? Could we still put those out there, or because we're leasing this land to them, would that be off limits?
So we're not leasing all the land, right?
Right.
So, I mean, the whole Blue Valley plant isn't all of a sudden under lease with them. It's only going to be the areas where they have the turbines and stuff like that. So to answer your question, I can't just say a yes or no. It's going to depend on whether I still have the gas capacity there to operate more units. There'll be connection points still because we do have a sub there. And the air derivatives, to me, I'm trying to keep this separate in my mind, that the UET Ventures project is an answer to the data center problem.
Right.
We still have future capacity issues that need to be solved outside of that for the rest of the city. So the gas turbine question that you're talking about, to me, answers the other capacity question, and it's something that I'm still going to study and look for answers for.
And that's why I was asking it, because I didn't want this to close off doors that
No,
we may need to go through
no,
to provide for residents.
this doesn't become the capacity that drives the city. This is an answer to the data center.
Okay.
Okay?
My other question is, who did this, UET Ventures, and then in the email that I got, they were called Rainbow Energy.
Yeah, so Rainbow Energy was kind of a mediatory company that hooked us up with UET, and Rainbow partners up with Northpoint a lot for energy issues at some of their sites, right? Northpoint's all over America, and this isn't the first place that a data center is wanting to go into a commerce center, right? So Rainbow is kind of that mediary, hey, we have people and groups that can solve this problem, and they're the ones that brought UET Ventures into that, who has the connections, the capital, the engineering to be able to do the studies and the permitting. So they have all those capabilities.
How long has this been discussed? I mean.
Not very long.
Just like weeks or?
Within, I don't know, maybe 30 days or so.
Okay, and this is probably a question you can't answer at this point. Will UET have their own people manning that, or would IPL be expected to provide manpower to operate?
That's a great question, and it's actually being discussed, whether they're a sole owner operator and we just buy power, or whether there are partnerships of they own, we operate, we help maintain. That's a lot of questions for the future, and I don't want to make any predictions on where that will land.
Yeah,
Yeah, I would just say about that, to Joe's point, everything about this agreement, was just a binding letter of intent that we want to look at the possible lease option. There are no actual lease terms in this agreement. There are no operational agreements or anything like that in place at this point. It simply gives Rainbow or UET the ability to apply for things on our behalf and get in that study queue with SPP and things like that to continue looking at moving forward. So it's nothing, there's no official agreement in place. It's just that intentional, we're looking at that partnership.
Yeah, so anything that I would say on that would be pure speculation. We don't have any agreements or anything. They are terms that are going to be discussed.
okay. And the last thing I have here is just kind of a comment that I wish we would have had an emergency meeting before this went to the council. Because I kind of feel like we just paid $500,000 for this KMT study. And one of the important points that they told us was that the PUAB is being underutilized, their words, underutilized. And then this thing comes up and we don't even discuss it. I mean, it doesn't get sent to us. That was kind of concerned. And I understand the time frame issue, but we could have had a meeting a week ago and just had a talk and sent something to the council. Pro or con, yes or no? We like this idea, yeah, do it. We have reservations, maybe we should hold off. You know, I'm not one way or the other. I think what's going on is probably fine, but the fact that we didn't even have an opportunity to discuss it troubles me when we just paid $500,000 for a report that told us that this board is being underutilized. This is what they're talking about. So that's all I got. Thank you.
I just make the point that that's our fault. I mean, we call our meetings, so I guess we could have done that. Yeah.
Anyone else? Anyone else before I get started?
Oh, okay, I've got one then. How long is the queue? I know you can't say, oh, it's this many days or something, but generally, how long is it taking for a project like this? Are we talking months, years?
Yeah, months, like 18 months.
18 months.
12 to 18 months.
Did you already say that?
No.
Okay, good. Sometimes I miss things.
No, but
Okay.
yeah, they get into a queue, and then, but like I said, the complicating factor is that SPP normally has an annual queue, but in 2025 they're not going to have one because they're redoing how they're going to do the queue, which pushes it to 2026.
Yeah.
And the prospective data centers would not be. They want answers before.
Sure.
Right.
Of course.
And we can't fool ourselves. They have options too, right?
Yeah.
So if we drag our feet too long and, well, give us a couple more years before we get in the queue to give us another 12 to 18 months to give you an answer, probably would not very well for us in that particular
Yeah, good. Okay,
scenario.
thanks.
Okay, I just have a few, so, I promise. Okay, so first off, the lease. We don't have a lease yet. And so when that lease comes up, will that come to the PUAB board? Will that come to us for review?
It would, but if we know that we need to call an emergency meeting or something like that
Absolutely.
ahead of time.
Well, I mean,
just-
So-
if this is a long process, then, I mean, if it's not happening like right away, I would think we'd have time to know ahead for it to come to the board.
There were some number of days per phase in this.
Right.
And so
Mhm.
as long as, Yeah.
We're in, I remember us extending the time.
Right, we did.
We asked it for more time because not just PUAB,
Right.
but also council things don't just get on there Friday for a Monday vote, right? So we have our own time restrictions.
Yeah, I think it
Well,
totaled like 160,000.
I will promise you that at every effort, you guys will be notified. And again, if you need to call an emergency meeting because we're running into a time crunch,
Right.
then I would ask that you guys make that decision because this, again, is your meeting, right? But I will keep you posted and informed all the way through the process will be my plan. And that was the
Right.
reason for the email before was I'm trying to maintain transparency.
Okay, and then, so what's UET's timeframe? I mean, just as a kind of, what's their ballpark timeframe on looking to, I know it's in the looking phase, the start, just the investigation phase right now, but what's the overall timeframe that everybody's kind of looking at with this? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
So I think big picture goals, because until they have everything firmed up, they're not going to actually, it's like going to buy a car. You think here's the delivery date, but until you place the order, right? So they don't have an actual turbine on order right now, but the goals would be to have equipment in and operating and providing power by the end of 2026.
Okay.
Okay? And then to be able to provide full power in 27 to 28 timeframe.
Okay.
Now, they do have options and alternative plans if equipment is being delayed, to where they do have relationships that they could actually get us some capacity before then from the market. So that would be the alternate plan, right? Yeah, we can't just tell the data center, well, sorry, we didn't make our time frame and they're ready to plug in and start using. So we have to have some backup plans, especially since we don't have equipment in the ground right now.
Right. So what they're doing is strictly for the data center. Is that right? I mean, okay.
If it wasn't for
because-
the data center, we wouldn't be doing any of this with them, right? So, yes,
Okay.
they are an answer to the data center, but they will add to our capacity, right? So I'm gonna have a purchase power agreement, much like we do with the coal and gas plants, so it will help the city overall, but then I'm also gonna add a major load. So,
Okay.
but yes, this is strictly for the data center, but it's not section, I can't say that.
Like it's an only.
Right.
Right. Okay, so with that being said, how are they able to project this, to get this done so quickly when we were looking at, if we wanted to do RCTs, we're looking at 3 years or more to be able to do that with permits and all that. So how are they able to do this even quicker than we are?
Well, for one, they have the manpower and the engineering staff,
Okay.
which I am struggling with right now, right? We've had a lot of open
Okay.
positions, and we are actually have hired staff that are contractors and doing engineering work for us, right? So manpower is one. For two, they have the funding already there because they're a smaller company that otherwise we'd have to go out for bonds and request that. you know, so our time frame to be able to line up money and people would take a lot longer than they can. They're ready to go, and they are smaller and more agile.
Okay, so even with our permitting it to be in the queue for us with FERC and all that, it was gonna be like almost 3 years? Is that separate? Is that separate from your manpower thing? My understanding was that to get into the queue, to be able to have a permit issued on down the road for the turbines, it was gonna be almost 3 years.
That was to get back into the queue, right?
Right.
Because it was backed up.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Okay.
getting better,
Okay,
and yeah,
Okay.
they're going to try to get into the current queue that is open right now.
okay. So this is something that basically that we wouldn't be able to accomplish at this time for us to do this. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I would not be able to accomplish this.
Okay, okay. And this may be jumping ahead, but again, these are questions that I started kind of mulling over. You know, when we talk about buying from them, how kind of just the Cliff Note version of how does that look if the data centers, if this is primarily kind of for the data center, so the data center gets the energy, we bill them, right? Okay, and then we pay UET,
Mhm.
right? Okay. So how does that look? I mean, what's the like right now, I know down the road you can't say, but like right now, what's the energy or what's the industry standard on like prevailing cost? Like right now, if they were to, if we had this in the ground right now, and they were using the energy, we were billing them, and then we had to pay UET, is there like an energy standard for that cost to us? Because basically then in a sense, we're purchasing the power from UET.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, so
Right.
so there'll be a whole business case built around that, right?
Mhm.
That I can't sell to a data center cheaper than what I'm buying the energy
Right.
for, either
Right.
from the market, from SPP, or from this purchase power agreement, right? So there's going to be a lot of classes studying and other people helping me look at the
Right.
rate structure for the data center that we're going to at least break even, if not better, and
Mhm.
hopefully there's going to be some room also for us to have a fair advantage. And then there's also the pilot that'll be paid to the city, right? So
Right.
so we should advantage, the city should advantage, and then also the development of bringing jobs and everything else to the city will help. But as far as the actual rate, I mean, I can tell you what we pay for SPP right now, but that's not
I know it'll be
that's not
different
the
down the
total
road,
rate, right? So, I mean, they're all speculative numbers right now. We just have to build a rate plan that takes into account inflation and everything
Right.
else. I can't just say,
Right.
okay, I'm going to charge you 6 cents. Well, that doesn't make sense overall to just say that unless there's, what does it look like in the future and what protections do we have built in? So there'll have to be a long-term purchase power agreement with the data center and with UET for the
Right.
buying of the power.
So is it most
Built into a
likely,
model.
so is it most likely to be a soft cap or a hard cap on the energy, on the cost of it?
Explain what you mean
Well,
by that.
okay, like a soft cap, we're able, usually you pay what, 3% over what the prevailing is. So, I mean, in general. So a soft cap being, when the energy rate goes down, we have the ability to negotiate with that pricing. A hard cap being, if we're paying still the 3% over, we're locked in, and even if the rates go down, we can't renegotiate. So that's the two things. And the reason partly that I ask that is because I'm sure that North Point, being a business, will probably get some kind of a discount to bring the business in. So if they do that, so that IPL still, the city still may, like you said, at least break even, I want to make sure that that doesn't fall back on the backs of the residential ratepayers to have to try and make up that difference from any discount that the company would get.
Okay, so we're like way down the road on speculation. I don't have a
Okay.
purchase power agreement from them, right?
Right,
And I mean,
right,
until we have
right.
hard numbers and data, I think we could discuss all day.
Right.
What, if this looked like that. And
Okay.
And I really think it'd be better once we have these agreements
Mm-hmm.
in hand and we can talk about the positives and negatives. I mean, the end all be all, if IPL broke even and paid, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how that would be on the backs of any residential ratepayers, right? Because if I am paying for my infrastructure and
Right. Mm-hmm.
everything that it costs me to serve that load, that's a net neutral on IPL and
Right.
is costing nobody any extra dollars. Now, the hope is that I completely flip the map
Mhm.
on, right now, we're 90% residential load
Right.
wise, right? Not customer.
Mhm.
Customer-wise, we're 90% load, we're 50% by actual load.
Right.
Well, I bring in 200 megawatts of industrial flat
Mhm.
load. I've totally flipped that script on that KW per dollars
Right.
fraction, right? And now I think we have room to start taking care of some of the things we've talked about for a long time.
And I understand that, and I wasn't trying to get like, I want the rates, because I know we can't. But again, I want to put that out there so at least we start having this in the back of our minds, so that when they start talking about stuff, we make sure that the residential ratepayers don't somehow have to make up in a rate increase to cover for a rate decrease somewhere else.
Okay,
It's just,
so I'm not gonna say there won't be rate increases for
Mhm.
residential. I'm not gonna say that, right?
right,
Regardless of the data center, because there's all kinds of other infrastructure things and cost
Mhm.
increase to operate aside from the data center. And I think you heard Councilmember McCandless state that, right?
Mhm.
That we all have to realize that the costs of things are continuing to go up. So
Right.
I'm not gonna.
Oh, yeah.
I am in no way gonna sit here and promise you that if a data center comes,
Right.
there's not gonna be rate increases. Now, the residents' rate increases to help pay for a data center, I can tell you that we will do the best of our ability to not make that happen, right? I mean, that would destroy the whole point of bringing that kind of
Right.
load and that kind of economic development to the city,
Mhm.
right? It's here to hopefully advantage the city. So,
And that's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to say, tell
yeah,
me.
I'm just
No,
cautious
that's not
with my
right.
words and what I'm promising or saying.
And I'm not asking for promises.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to have a discussion,
Yep.
ask some questions, so.
That would ultimately be the goal, though, right? Is that this data center does not impact residential rates negatively.
Right. So I think kind of piggybacking on one of Anthony's questions, as far as like the plant, we've got people in there right now that if we do lease out, so we don't even know, we're not even there as far as what's going to happen to the people that are working there, whether they're absorbed somewhere in IPL or if they go to work for UET or.
So I think you're under a misconception that the rest of the city's gonna shut down the rest of our power. Well, you're saying,
No.
where are they gonna go?
Well-
They're not going anywhere. They still have things to maintain. They still have things to
Right.
operate in the city. They still got stuff to work on. So again, this is over here. The rest of the city is still operating. I'm not
Right.
getting rid of any people because of this. I'm
No,
not
and that's,
creating any jobs.
No, and that's not, again, I'm just asking questions.
Okay.
Because, again, if we'd have known all this before it went to the council, I think questions always need to be asked, whether they're nice questions or questions we don't like or whatever. I still think they need to be asked, and that's all I'm doing is asking the questions. So,
This would not impact any of the employees
Okay.
out there.
and that's fine. And then, so my last question is, Rainbow, what's their experience with building and operating? You know, a plant like we're trying to do here. I mean,
They've got decades of experience, and the project lead for this one has, I think he's got 40 to 50 years worth of experience himself, owning, building, and operating plants like these.
okay,
Simple cycle, combined cycle, gas plants. They've built incinerators. They've built all kinds of different
okay.
power equipment. And I can give you both their websites, and you can see there's a array of. They're not small dogs in the industry. They've
Okay.
been around and they've done a lot of projects.
Well, because I was asking because I started doing a little research on them, and the only thing I could find was what they had done up in North Dakota. And they had expressed some concerns up there because that was like their first, maybe not UET, but Rainbow. That was their first plant that they had done up in North Dakota.
That's why they brought UET on board, I believe.
Okay, fair enough. I think those are all my questions. Okay, I appreciate that. Anybody else? Okay. Assistant City Manager, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to thank the board for your involvement with the DKMT studies and your engagement in that process, and also for the letter of support in rescinding that non-ordinance action item. I know that gives staff a lot of peace of mind and just lets us start looking forward instead of being in that weird limbo. So just wanted to express that gratitude.
Okay, I guess we're down to member comments. Any comments?
I don't have any.
Okay. I'm just going to kind of end with this. And this kind of deals with the whole governance thing, because I know we've been talking about that. So I just want to say that I think one element of the governance issue mentioned in the DKMT report is being glossed over. Emphasis being placed on putting qualified people on a public utilities board. First, I don't know how much more qualified a person would have to be than our chair, Les Boatwright. While I agree 100% with the DKMT governance recommendation, the other part of this, according to DKMT, is the council needs to stop underutilizing, start listening to the recommendations of the PUAB. The fact that the PUAB was not presented any information on the UT measure before the council voted on it, and by that I mean the whole information, is a glaring example of underutilization of the PUAB that DKMT was referring to. There needs to be some soul searching and insight from the council on how we got to this point. Take me, for example. The reason you got me as a board member is because I've been following IPL issues for years over the tenure of multiple councils. It is because of my voiced concern over the council's decisions on things like Missouri City, the solar farm, and how AMI was being done, and my many conversations with numerous council members that I was asked if I would be willing to serve. As unqualified as we may be perceived, I do want the council to know that the PUAB puts in many hours of reading, research, and thought into the recommendations we make to the council. I personally base my recommendations on what I believe would be best for IPL and the best interests of the ratepayers. Ultimately, the concerns of the ratepayers are why I'm on this board. So when the council decides to ignore the recommendations of the PUAB or leaves the PUAB out of the loop entirely, they are ignoring first the voice of the ratepayers and secondly the best interest of IPL. Just 2 years ago, the council could not foresee the need for generation. IPL and PUAB did, and so we are now going outside to get what we need. I would just like to see some acknowledgement from the council that they will work on their end that needs to be done to remedy this. As Heather from DKMT said, without the underutilization issue being resolved, the qualified people that we need will not want to serve on the board. The council's reliance on Indie Energy, who are no more qualified than any of us, by the way, over the recommendations of the PUAB needs to be remedied. Examples, Indie Energy supported the solar farm that we will lose millions on over the course of the contract. Indie Energy supported the sale of IPL and pushed the sale of IPL to be placed on the ballot. Council needs to heed the recommendations of PUAB over Indie Energy. There is a perception that a select group makes most of the decisions here in Independence, and I hope when we make the governance changes to the PUAB that we can find a way to take the politics or even the perception of politics out of it. Thank you. And with that, nobody else has any comments or questions? Okay. I guess we'll call the board or the meeting adjourned. Oh, you want to? Oh, okay. Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Brad for creating a forum.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
I serve some purpose.
That's right.
Thanks for all your input, Mr. Campbell.
Anytime. Anytime.
I know, he was walking down here, I'm like, you're going to PUA